Today I'm putting the Nvidia RTX 5080 to the limit. I'm going to be playing Cyberpunk 2077, Flight Simulator, and Black Myth Wukong. These three titles are some of the most high demanding games that you can play right now, and most computers can't run it on ultra settings at any resolutions. But let's see how the RTX 5080 does. By the way, this GPU is basically out of stock everywhere, so if you want to buy a 5080 right now, I will leave the best in-stock PCs with the 5080 down in the video description with the latest prices and availability in your region. My name is Valentino. That being said, let's start. So let's get right into it. I will test Cyberpunk 2077, which is one of the most high demanding games, with everything set to ultra, ray tracing on Psycho. Yeah, there's a setting that's called Psycho, and then I will put path tracing on. This is the highest settings that you can try in Cyberpunk, and I mean, it's not really playable. You can see the FPS in the top left corner. We are averaging around 17 FPS, so it's not playable. I would only use this setting if you want to take some pictures of the game, because maybe you want to do some photo editing. Well, in that case, yeah, of course, you can turn on this setting, and even though it's not really playable, you're just taking one screenshot and that's all you need. But we are definitely putting the 5080 to the limit right here. It's at 99% utilization almost all the time. So yeah, it is very high demanding. I wouldn't play with these settings at all. But now what I'm going to do is turn on DLSS quality to see how much better the performance is. And by turning on DLSS quality, we are averaging over 30 FPS, which, let me tell you, is not ideal, but it's also playable. I mean, at least in my opinion. Of course, it's not going to be the best out there. If you can average around 60 FPS, it's much better. But again, I mean, 30 FPS is not that bad, considering that we are testing Cyberpunk 2077 with path tracing enabled. And as I always say, I cannot tell the difference between DLSS quality and native resolution, so the image quality is top tier. Now, what I'm going to do is turn off path tracing, but still have ray tracing ultra turned on. And now we are averaging around 48 FPS. In some cases, we are reaching over 50 FPS, so much more playable. Of course, you can play with these settings if you want. The image quality is still top tier. I mean, I'm not a pro here, so I cannot tell the difference between DLSS quality native or path tracing on or path tracing off. So with these settings, you can easily play with no issues. Now I will turn every setting to high instead of ultra, which again, the image quality is still top tier. And now we are averaging over 60 FPS. This is a much better setting. If you want to be over 60 FPS on average and get some of the best visuals that you can get, I think that this setting is one of the best ones. Ray tracing ultra, DLSS quality, and everything else set to high. You can try it on if you have a 5080, and trust me when I say that if you have a 4K monitor, you are going to be blown away by the visuals, and you are going to be averaging around 70 FPS. And then if you set DLSS to performance instead of quality, then you're going to be averaging around 90 FPS, which is very high FPS for this type of game. And remember, you still have ray tracing enabled. I do think that DLSS performance is much more improved from previous generations, so I feel comfortable by recommending turning on performance if you want more FPS. Now, I don't know what's up with Cyberpunk 2077, but every time I try to drive around, there are some people trying to kill me. I don't know if the game is designed that way, but I definitely don't like it, because I was just trying to show you the graphics, and every time I was trying to drive, there were some guys trying to kill me. And yeah, I mean, it's not as easy as GTA 5. They really try, and they actually ended up killing me. Now we are trying Black Myth Wukong, which is another one of the most high demanding games out there, and I'm trying everything set to cinematic and the full ray tracing level set to very high, so this is max settings. And just like Cyberpunk 2077, I was averaging low FPS, but this time a bit higher than Cyberpunk with path tracing. Actually, the FPS average here was about 22 FPS. Yeah, I mean, it's not playable. Again, if you want to take some pictures of the game, by all means turn this setting on. But if you want to play the game, you are not going to be enjoying your experience at around 20 FPS on average, especially in combat scenarios where even if you don't need 100 FPS, definitely around 40 to 60 FPS is going to be much better. But again, here we are utilizing almost all of the 5080 power, so I am putting it to the test for sure. Now what I'm going to do is turn on DLSS, because I was playing with DLAA. This is DLSS balanced, and now we are averaging over 40 FPS, and it's much more playable. It's not ideal, it's not over 60 FPS, but it is at least playable. Like, you can genuinely play with these settings. And if you turn down from cinematic to very high, which is still amazing in terms of quality, well, you will be averaging closer to 50 FPS. So yeah, you can play with these settings if you want and have no issues, because this is a very high demanding game. This is not an esports shooter. And then if you turn DLSS performance mode instead of balanced, then you are going to be averaging around 60 FPS. So if you want that 60 FPS experience with ray tracing enabled, this is what I would do. Just turn DLSS performance and then everything set to very high, not cinematic. Visuals are still amazing. As I said before, DLSS performance is much more improved compared to previous generations. So in the end, you can tweak these settings yourself and see what works best for you. But yeah, I mean, you can also turn down ray tracing to medium and you still get that nice reflection from the ray tracing technology. And then you're going to be averaging over 70 FPS, which is very, very playable if you have DLSS performance and everything else set to very high. And by the way, if you don't care about ray tracing and you play with DLSS quality, everything else set to very high, you are going to be averaging over 90 FPS, which is a very high number for this type of game, and the visuals are still amazing. If you really don't care about ray tracing, you will be averaging very high FPS, even in the most high demanding games at 4K. Now we are testing Red Dead Redemption 2, everything set to ultra, not high. This is ultra settings 4K without DLSS, so basically some of the max settings that you can try in this game. This is one of the best looking games in my opinion, and it is very well optimized. I mean, we are averaging over 100 FPS, utilizing over 95% of the 5080, so very healthy numbers here. It's a very smooth experience. That being said, if you want to play Red Dead Redemption 2, yeah, just set everything to ultra, even at 4K, and you will be getting some of the best visuals and also an amazing level of gaming performance. I mean, for this type of games, even 70 FPS is considered really good performance, so over 100 FPS on average is actually quite insane. I mean, this game is so well optimized that I actually ran benchmarks at 8K resolution with DLSS quality, and I was hitting over 60 FPS. And then let's test Flight Simulator, another one of the most high demanding games out there. This is everything set to ultra, DLAA, so this is basically the max settings. We are flying over San Francisco, home of the Golden State Warriors. I'm a Warriors fan, and yeah, I mean, we are averaging over 40 FPS, which for this game is really good performance. I mean, 30 FPS I believe is considered good for this game, 60 FPS is considered top tier, but remember this is ultra settings, so it's very high to average over 60 FPS. I guess if you are in a less demanding city or just flying over water, then you're going to be averaging over 60 FPS, but this is San Francisco. It's a very big city, it is high demanding, so over 40 FPS is actually really good, and we are averaging around 50 FPS actually, so pretty great. Then what I decided to do is turn on DLSS quality, and I was averaging over 60 FPS. So yeah, if you want an over 60 FPS experience, you can easily turn everything to ultra, DLSS quality, and you are going to be averaging around 60, which, as I said before, is top tier performance for this game. And last but not least, I decided to turn on frame generation because it actually works amazingly well in this game. In some games, frame generation is not ideal, but for this game, is actually a good implementation, and in that case you are going to be averaging over 100 FPS, so very, very high FPS for this type of game or simulator, however you want to call it. But it actually uses a lot of VRAM. I mean, the 5080 has 16 gigs of VRAM and we are utilizing almost every bit of those 16 gigs. So there you have it. Even though we couldn't run the latest games with ray tracing on and without any DLSS, I do think that the 5080 is a beast of a 4K GPU. You can max out any game at 4K as long as you don't have path tracing on, for example. And even if you have path tracing, if you turn on DLSS quality or DLSS performance, then you are going to maintain the image quality because DLSS works amazingly well and you can play with ray tracing enabled without any issues. In my opinion, it's very playable even in those settings, and the image quality is amazing. And to be fair, I get why most people were annoyed because it's not so much faster than the 4080 Super, but at the end of the day, it's still the best option at its price point if you can get it for $1,000, which right now is very hard. So if you want to get the 5080 right now, or maybe RTX 5090, I will leave gaming PCs with the 5080 and 5090 that are in stock right now down in the video description with the latest prices and availability. So the only way of getting the 5080 right now is by buying a pre-built PC, which by the way, pre-built PCs with the 5080 right now are actually pretty good quality, so I feel comfortable recommending you those, and again, those will be down below in the video description. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.